Larry, we live in a world and in a time where information is absolutely everywhere. It's never been easier to find information than it is at this point in human existence right now. The problem that I notice for a lot of people is that it's not actually an information concern. It's taking action once we have enough information to do that. So one of the things I want to talk to you about today is this theme that we've noticed in this phenomenon called decision paralysis. I know you've worked with clients and had many conversations around this. The first thing that I want to hear from you is, when you think about decision paralysis, what does it actually look like in real life for a professional who works with clients? What might this look like?
I think that it's any time that someone's at a point where they're reluctant to do something because they're worried that there might be a better way that they haven't found yet. Or what's going to be the consequence of doing it, and there actually isn't this clear tip in any direction of the risk reward. I think that's the worst place to be, is when you're not sure, because all of your options seem like they're equally risky or potentially equally rewarding. That's not a good place to be, unless you're ready to just go, all right, let's try A, B, and C. But most people don't do that.
Why do you think that this is such a common pattern right now, especially among these intelligent, high-achieving clients?
Well, I think that being smart plus having a lot of information makes it very easy to end up in spirals of indecision, especially if you're someone smart who is also very fearful, or just lacking courage, or insecure or lacking confidence around your ability to do stuff. In general, if you have low self-efficacy and you're smart and you're afraid, you're not going to go anywhere. It's going to actually make it harder.
Yeah, I can see that. Would it also be the type of person who feels like could this also be the type of person who feels like they've tried a lot of things?
I think that that's often the person when they feel like the more things that they've tried that haven't worked creates this mountain of evidence that the likelihood of the next thing working goes down.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Let's ground this story. Let's ground this in a story, because I imagine that there are a lot of people listening to this who have had clients in this scenario. Do you have an example for me?
Let's use Jennifer's story. We'll call her Jennifer. Jennifer is the person who has done so much research that she could teach a course on her own problem, or even a problem like it, like a back pain problem. She could teach you about it. Jennifer is the person who, from chronic back pain, has done countless hours of research. She's had multiple consultations with different providers and even online groups. 6 months later, 9 months later, she's still planning and sifting through the right next thing to do instead of just doing stuff to try to get out of low back pain.
What about this process really sticks out to you or stands out to you about how Jennifer is thinking about solving this problem?
She's spending more time thinking than she is doing.
How do we know when we hit that threshold of information to action? Is there something clear that we might be able to discern here?
I think that the hard part is that a lot of people don't know how to do that. And they don't have people that can work with them as unbiased advocates for how to work through their own decision-making process of when is it time to try something. And I think that when people are left on their own like that, without any guidance or without any kind of external reference, they just end up in this spiral of all the things and not knowing what to do. And so I think a lot of people have a hard time finding that threshold.
They have a hard time finding it. So is there an opportunity then for the coach or the trainer listening to this to help them be the sounding board, the lightning rod, the whatever for decision making?
I don't think that there's another category of practitioner in the world that's better than a coach to help people do that.
We'll talk I want to hear from you how we would go through that process, because I think that there's going to be a lot of value that we can derive from that. Before that, how do we know if a client might be confusing the the accumulation of knowledge or information as actual progress? Because I can definitely see that happening.
Oh man. Well, remember back in like, I don't know, what was it like? I think it was probably 10, 12 years ago. I saw for the first time, this is gonna sound ridiculous, this self-help video around how predatory and ineffectual the self-help industry is for so many people. This, and it rattled me out of this way of being. The self-help industry is this industry that produces endless amounts of content. I mean, like mass producing content that people listen to, watch, or read around what it would look like if they did things differently and became better. You familiar with this, right? This basic.
Yeah.
So, right. So what the problem is, and there's one word that I think perfectly describes this. It's all masturbatory. It's masturbatory. There isn't actually anything that's happening. And the reason that this is actually so insidious is that all of the researching about things that you could do and could be and could have actually signal to your brain this illusion of forward movement and change, but you actually don't go anywhere. Like that's not how change happens. Change doesn't happen from being exposed to an idea. It happens from implementing practically what is different from your exposure to the idea. You have to be, I hate to say it, but you have to be the change that you're talking about, not reflect on or like or fantasize about the change. That's not what does it. And it actually entrenches people in a really, really nasty way.
I heard somebody recently talking about this, about energy being a finite resource. And the same energy that we would use to action and talking about something.
Oh man, I see where you're going.
They're the same energy pool that it's being pulled from. And sometimes what we can do is we can convince ourselves that we're actually making progress towards the thing by just talking about the thing or gathering information about the thing.
And you could just stay stuck there forever.
I noticed this, I went through this whole personal development phase in the early 2020.
You're done with that now?
Well, the point around, like, it was what I found in myself is it was finishing one thing and then immediately starting the next thing. So it was going from like strong coach to enlifted level 2 to level 3 to training camp for the soul to whatever. I was always chasing the next thing. And all it was just the accumulation of information and taking in more and more and more. And one of the things that I learned I wasn't doing is I wasn't actually taking the time after that to go through this phase of implementation, which is so valuable. There needs to be learning. To Jennifer's point earlier, she probably for herself needs to do some of that learning. But we hit the threshold of like how long and how much information is enough information for you to take whatever the right next step is. And that's what I think a lot of people miss, whether it be a client or a professional, right? If you're the coach or the trainer who every 3 months you're taking the next certification, you may not be giving yourself enough time to go through this phase of action and implementation.
Yep, I agree.
So we talked about this paralysis of endless options, right? Let's get a little bit into the mechanics of this and what's actually happening when someone's finding themselves stuck in this loop of researching, comparing, and waiting. My question for you is, I've heard you talk about this dopamine loop.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to me and what mechanisms or what's going on there?
Yeah, I think that's touching on what we were just talking about, but I want to expand it. So a really key realization for me about how dopamine works in the brain, and I have what I would call as generally dysregulated dopamine system. So I've done a lot of thinking and reading about this, which is kind of ironic to what we're talking about. But one of the biggest realizations that I've taken away from this is that it's actually not the reward that gives us the dopamine boost.
Okay.
Getting the candy, winning the race doesn't do it. But a lot of people think that the reward gives us the dopamine boost. That's not where the dopamine comes from. Dopamine comes from the anticipation of the reward. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. So when we think about where dopamine comes from, the reason that you get into this like dopamine IV fix addiction to research and thinking about all of this stuff and reading this stuff is that you're going through all of these things that are triggering this anticipation of an outcome that you want. But you're just on this IV drip of information that's giving you this dopamine reward from the anticipation. So you literally get addicted to just learning more and researching more, but you don't actually ever do anything or get anything. You don't ever create an adaptation. I think that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That blew my mind when I started to understand that.
Well, to the word that you used earlier on the self-help space is masturbatory.
That's it.
Right? It just becomes, it's doing the thing for the sake of doing the thing to feel some sort of progress, growth, pleasure for moving forward without actually moving forward.
Yeah. Like I remember hearing, I think it was Sam Harris talk about how, like the bullseye of dopamine release is when you're looking forward to a thing. Like there was research done on what people that went out to party, like on a Friday night, like you got partiers, you're like, you're pre-gaming at your house and then you're going out to the club or the bar, or the event or whatever it's going to be. And then there's the after party, then you go home. And they did research like on they pulled like thousands of people. Like what was your favorite part of the night? And so many people say getting ready to go out with their friends. And so that points to, well, it's not the being out, it's the getting ready to be out, right? And then Sam Harris pointed out something that it's like, like the bullseye of dopamine release is, oh, this is about to get better than I thought it was. That's the ultimate, right? And so that really points to the fact that it's this anticipation and pursuit of a reward that's getting us all jazzed. And so the problem is that you could put yourself on a treadmill and just be fed a dopamine fix of reward for being on a treadmill. You're not walking anywhere.
Yeah. That's a really fascinating example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this relationship that exists between uncertainty and safety in the brain. And my question for you around this is, why does too much choice actually make people feel less in control sometimes?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I actually really like the way that you talk about this. I think that you've done a good job of describing how we'll often choose familiar over new and uncertain, even if the familiar sucks. Right?
Yeah.
And so there's this sense of, okay, I can have certain and familiar pain or discomfort that I know is going to be the same tomorrow as it was today, and that feels safe to me. Or I can actually do something to change my situation, and literally the uncertainty in and of itself scares me away from doing it, because the lack of familiarity and the uncertainty of the outcome is going to cost me maybe physical, mental, financial, emotional energy that I don't know that I'm prepared to spend. And so people just stay spending less energy on something that they dislike.
Yeah, it makes me think of the example of when for people, the threshold for action for a lot of people, it seems is this: you have to hit this moment of rock bottom before things have to get so bad that you are willing to take the step to make things different, because we get this comfortably numb sensation of the familiar.
I'm curious what you think about how abundance of choice, can be paralyzing, and I'm curious about why you think that can give us a feeling of less control. Like I know that in many cases I want fewer choices. Like when I go to an ice cream shop, I want 3 flavor options, dude. Like when I go to a restaurant, when restaurants have like 4 things on the menu, I'm stoked, man. I don't want to have to walk up and down the ice cream shop to look at all of the flavors to pick. Just give me what do you got? What's good? And so I'm curious what your I know why that's helpful to me, but I'm curious how you tie that into a sense of control. Like where do you see a loss of control come in?
Potentially, where my brain goes on this is potentially what happens is we are wired for this future casting. Like it's very difficult, it seems like, for us as the human animal to live in the moment. So we're always projecting into the future in some way, shape, or form, right? And if we have these, if we're at a fork in the road and there are 2 outcomes, like you were talking about, I can with relative certainty, I can say, okay, here's what's going to happen by me going down this road versus here's what's going to happen here. And I feel like I have a sense of control there.
Right.
But if I hit that fork in the road and there are 1,000 branches here, I'm like, oh shit.
So it's literally just the simplicity of saying, all right, I can handle 2 options.
Yes.
As opposed to I can handle 1,000. Yeah.
That seems to be helpful.
That makes sense. I can see why it would be more paralyzing to have 1,000 because of a sense of that. Yeah.
Well, look, there's a 50-50 shot that I get this wrong with two options. 1 in 1,000. I've got now, like, I'm a 1,000th.
I know, it's rough.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
So keeping in this theme, what I can imagine to be true here, and I'm thinking more of the analytical people here who might be listening to this, the people who might fall into this perfectionism trend. Where does perfectionism fit into this picture, and how does thoroughness become avoidance?
I love this question, and I am actually going to pull up here and reference, as a recovering perfectionist, or a perfectionist in recovery, I actually made a post a while back around what I realized and what my perfectionism taught me, and I think that it'll be a really good way to answer this. It was called Confessions of a Perfectionist, and I have 9 confessions of a perfectionist here, a recovering one. Now, the first one, at my core, there's a deep sense of I'm not blank enough. That's number 1. 2, I get to avoid responsibility by declaring I'm not ready yet. Right? 3, if I make something perfect, I'll be able to avoid the shame of imperfection.
Yep.
4, criticism was a big part of my past, and in seeking perfection, I can avoid it. Right? 5, if I make XYZ more perfect, people will love, accept, whatever me more. Right? 6, I use the pursuit of perfection as an excuse to avoid action.
Yep.
7, I use the pursuit of perfection to avoid my fear of failure. 8, by pursuing perfection, I create a protective armor and facade. And then 9, by pursuing perfection, I avoid being great right now, because there's a big responsibility in that if you're actually capable of doing it. So with respect to perfection, I have learned that perfectionism is entirely avoidance. It's entirely avoidance, because you're afraid of something, but it's entirely avoidance.
Yeah. So it's determining for you, what is it that I'm trying to avoid here? And then
and that's why when I say coach, I just mean anyone that can stand in as an unbiased advocate that can challenge you with questions and help you examine and give more clarity to yourself to help you find out, well, what is it that you are avoiding? What are you afraid of? Yeah.
A next helpful step here, or a next helpful theme, is willpower and decision fatigue. I think that we often discount the power of decision fatigue, and going back to energy being a finite resource, willpower is the same thing. It's a finite resource for people. So how do these micro decisions end up eroding confidence in making the big one?
Oh man, this is such a good point. Well, first of all, decision fatigue and willpower is something that I've really worked hard to develop. It's not, I know people that I feel like their ability to make decisions all day with a high degree of stamina is really impressive, and it's like their superpower. It's something I've really worked hard on, because I think being able to make sound decisions at any point is really an important thing. And when you're at the end of the day, for example, and you're cooked, imagine what it's like when someone's asking you to decide upon something really big and significant. You're like, can we just do this tomorrow? And it's because you know that after a night of sleep, you're going to be like, all right, we could talk about that. I can't talk about this right now. I'm like trying to peel myself off the couch, right?
Yeah.
When we have more and more and more information that we're sifting through, forget decisions about which trigger you're going to pull. You have to make decisions about which trigger you're going to examine pulling next. It's just crazy. It just eats up a ton of energy. And the longer you spend thinking about these things, the more energy you spend making decisions about what to think about and how, the less likely it is that you're actually going to spend the energy to pull a trigger in a direction that's going to make change for you.
What I was looking up, this was I wanted to make sure I was correct in this. This was a staggering statistic to me when I first saw it. The average adult makes somewhere around 35,000 decisions a day.
Wow. I feel like I can count like 6 from today. Made a good one this morning for breakfast. That's basically it.
You decided what to wear, what socks to put on, when you were going to leave, what time you were going to wake up, what you were going to do when you woke up, what was the first action, the second action, the third. This is where, like, if you study some high performers, this is one of the things that they often talk about with
they decrease the number, eh?
The number, yeah. So like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg would wear the same thing all the time because that was one less decision that they had to make. This is where, like, when I used to work with nutritional coaching clients, this was something that I talked to them about. Like, no wonder you're making a terrible decision for dinner because you're at the end of the day, like you had said, made all of these decisions.
And you got to make another one.
And you got to make another one. You're like, fine, pizza. Pizza sounds fine.
Yeah.
Meal prep. Like, this is where meal prep becomes a hack for a lot of people. And if you see some people who stick to very rigorous nutritional protocols, one of the tools that they use for this is they'll have the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe for a week, and then they'll rotate that. Because, again, it's one less decision that I have to make.
I like it. I should probably try that.
And willpower being that finite resource, I think often what we can do as coaches or trainers is sometimes we get in these scenarios and we have clients who aren't sticking to whatever the plan is, aren't sticking to X, Y, Z. They're not doing their thing outside of here. And we could fall into the trap of being like, you just don't want it bad enough.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're lazy, whatever the story that we create in our head, but understanding that they've made 35,000 decisions already today.
It's insensitive to the fact that they've already made a lot of decisions, and we need to shift the way that they're doing that. Yeah.
And willpower being the finite resource, we can build a better system, and we can help them create a better system for themselves by giving them some tools.
What are you spending your power on? Yeah,
exactly.
Makes sense.
So let's talk about something called this decision deadline framework, because I imagine that this is going to be really helpful for coaches to be able to start to implement with their clients if they so choose. Walk us through what it looks like and how to apply this to a real client conversation.
Okay. The first is that the decision, the establishment of a deadline for a decision is a decision that a decision will be made at that point. And there's something so beautiful about this because you literally, so we've talked about deciding a lot. For those of you who haven't heard it, I think it's important to walk through the etymology of the word decide. I'm a nerd about this. You've probably seen this a million times. For people who don't know what the word decide actually means, it comes from Latin, which means to cut off all other options. Decide means to cut off all other options. That's what deciding means, all other options. So this idea that I'm going to make a decision, in 7 days from now at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is a hugely valuable decision because it means at that time you're going to be doing something. Now think about all of the other things that could have happened instead of you making a decision in a week at 5 p.m. You could have spent another 6 months evaluating all of these other things. So there's this huge decision that you're making that is going to set you up with the amount of time that leaves you feeling like I have a little time and space to not make a decision and mull it over, knowing that you're going to do it then. It's saving you a lot of energy.
Yeah. Well, how many times does that happen where they're like, next week, I'll make it next week, and it turns into next month, next year?
That's what you avoid. And the beauty is, oftentimes people know the decision that they're going to make before they get to that deadline. They just needed to decide that they were going to decide.
So that speaks to the intention here, like why we're doing the thing. That makes sense. How do we, because I can imagine that a coach thinking about this, like, yeah, this all makes sense right now. How do I introduce this in a way that feels collaborative rather than coercive, or me trying to convince them to do something?
Well, I think that it's important we remember that our job as coaches are always to primarily be asking questions about people's values and beliefs to allow them to clarify and reveal what they want to have happen. And that will reveal the obvious next thing to do for them. So if I'm thinking about how to be collaborative, which I'm never trying to coerce anything, I'm always trying to collaborate. The question is something along the lines of, do you believe that it's important that you make a decision about this soon? Yes. Would it be helpful if you knew that a decision needed to be made by a certain time? Would that kind of offload the pressure of and the burden of wondering, when is this ever going to happen? Yeah, I guess it would. Would it be helpful if you had 3 options chosen for you? Or would you prefer to decide what your options are? Things like this is going to just ask them very, very straightforwardly, how would you prefer you're treated about this whole thing? And then you just do that.
Yeah, that's a really good that's a really good frame for creating a collaborative environment there. Let's also give them a frame and some phases for how they can take this and practically implement it. Specifically, there are really 3 phases that we're going to describe very quickly. There's the information gathering phase, the decision criteria, and the action threshold.
I love it. Okay.
So the information gathering phase is what?
Well, the information gathering phase is where we're putting together all of the stuff that we want to learn about or know to compare and contrast so that we have what we're going to decide between. Right? We're going to think about 3 ways that we can get out of low back pain here. We're going to learn about option A, we're going to learn about option B, we're going to learn about option C.
Is it helpful to have a timeline for this?
I think it's helpful to have timelines for anything that you actually want to do. Unless, like, whether or not it happens doesn't matter.
Sure. Right. So it could be, the conversation could be something like, hey, you want to gather some more information. How long do you want to do this for? Do you want to gather for a week, 2 weeks, a month?
Exactly.
What does that look like?
Exactly.
Okay. Then we have decision criteria. So what I can imagine is this is where we say, okay, once we have X, that's when we make the decision to do Y. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Can you? I think that you're good at better than describing this than I am. How would you ask someone in such a way that they can decide for themselves what the decision-making criteria are? What's a question that you can see yourself asking so that people can decide for themselves? When X, Y, Z, then I'll something like that, right?
Yeah, I go very straightforward at this question. What needs to be true in order for you to make a decision either for or against this thing? What needs to be true?
So it's like, how would you know?
Yeah. How would you know? The thing I've been talking with the professionals a lot about in Long Beach is everything that you're doing, treat it like an experiment. Right? What's the variable that we're trying to control for? How long are we going to do this for? And how are we going to know whether it's been a success or a failure? Right? That's the decision criteria that we're talking about here. How much information do you want to gather? Great. Is it 3 resources? Is it 5? Is it 10? How long do you want to do your information gathering for? At that point in time, when you have this breadth of information, how are you going to know what needs to be true in order for you to make a decision here that you're going to be happy with, that you're going to be comfortable making?
Yeah.
And then the last step is the action threshold, right? This is where we go from okay, I have all the information. I've decided this is what needs to be true in order for me to act on the information. And now I actually have to do something with it. It's my threshold for action. Can you briefly describe what the action threshold would be?
Well, to me, the action threshold has always been, are you in a position where you've decided that you staying the same is worse than the uncertainty of the change that we're aiming to create? That's it. Is this worse? Is you continuing to do this worse than what might happen? If it is, people are going to do stuff. If it's not, then they're not going to do anything.
That makes sense. I just saw a post today from Code of the West, which is an account that I follow on Instagram. And they were talking about the investment in, if you think that it's hard to make a decision now, why don't you spend some time thinking about the cost of inaction for that decision?
Yeah.
That's really that's one of the things that I don't think enough people are taking into account when they're doing this information gathering, to the point around consuming information we're not taking into account the 3 months, 4 months, 6 months that are lost by really inaction.
I think that people have a generally hard time because I don't think it's taught. It's not because I don't think most people can do it. I think that most people have a hard time forecasting and working their way through the vision of how things might go if you do X, Y, Z or A, B, C or do nothing. I think that people generally lack skill in their ability to cast vision down the road and to start to examine, well, what if you don't? And I think this can be taught, and I think that it can be guided. And I think that the problem with that is we end up with this kind of myopic, generalized fear of just anything other than what my state is right now is not something that I want. And you're basically walking around with blinders on. You're just like, you're not doing anything. It's just like, hey, want to change how things are going right now? Well, how is it going to change? I don't know, so probably not. Give me the certainty that I'm going to change in such a way that it's going to feel good, and then I'll do it. And people don't know how to work through, well, what happens if you continue doing just what you're doing? Have you decided how much longer you're okay to continue having the low back pain that you have? It's such a powerful question for people. Most people never think about it. Have you decided that it's okay if your back pain never changes? Have you decided that the things that you've told me you can't do are things you're okay not doing anymore? Like these are things that allow people to really look down the road a little bit. And I think that those are things that can be a skill. So to your point, the cost of inaction, it almost always outweighs the cost of action. Almost always.
Yeah, the only thought that I had that correlates to this is, as human beings, we are terrible predictors of the future.
Yeah.
How many times have you had a conversation in your head about the conversation you were about to have? And then how did those two things actually line up in reality?
Yeah, not a strong correlation.
No. So we're terrible at predicting the future, first of all. So sometimes when we go down that road of either action or inaction, right? We go down what if I take the wrong action and then it leads to a worse outcome, and we don't factor in like you said, the cost of inaction. So I think we give ourselves a little bit too much credit for our ability to predict the future, when if we look at the evidence, we've been terrible predictors.
Yeah, not so hot.
I would have never predicted that I would be here right now in 2025 if you asked me that in 2015. So having that understanding, I think, can be really helpful for us here when we get caught in this analysis paralysis.
Okay.
All right. As we wrap this up, we know that sometimes this decision paralysis looks like caution, but it's actually fear wearing a lab coat.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
As professionals, our job, it's not to rush to decision or to even push people to decision making. It's to guide them. Confidence isn't built by knowing everything. It's built by moving despite uncertainty.
I think that's a really important point to hammer home. I think that I've heard so many times people describe, I want to be a little bit more confident about this decision, or I want to be a little bit more confident and then I will X, Y, Z. And they've got it backwards. Confidence doesn't precede action. Confidence is a symptom of the action that you've taken and the evidence that you've amassed as a result of your action. It's always action first, confidence second. There's nothing that you're confident about right now that came without action that has demonstrated a consistent outcome. Period.
Yep.
Everything you're confident right now is because you've done something in a certain way. You've lived life in a certain way that has made you confident with what happens when you live your life this way. So of course you're not confident about the thing that you want to be the thing that's going to help you. Of course you're not. How could you be? You've never done it. That's not how confidence happens. So I just think that's a really important point to hammer.
Yeah.
It's normal
Yes.
that you're apprehensive about something you've never done before, especially if you're emotionally invested in it working. It's normal to be nervous about that.
Yeah. It's competence precedes confidence. You have to, and the competence comes from the action, from doing the thing.
Correct.
Again, if we go back to the client who's never done any sort of weightlifting before, in the very beginning, they're not going to have competence or confidence, but we're going to help them build competence, and that's what leads to confidence.
Correct.
Larry, is there any key takeaways that you want to leave anyone listening to this with?
Yeah, if you're a coach that leads people, understand that your responsibility is primarily to help them evaluate what's important to them and how they are going to make decisions about that. And then if you have the tools to serve the route that they want to take, that's your job to give it to them. So understand that that is your job, and it's probably one of the greatest gifts that you can give them, more than the program. If you're someone who is worried about or feeling indecisive about anything, whether you're a coach or you're just someone, if you're someone who's indecisive about anything, I would really heed these things that we discussed and understand that the more time you spend not making a decision, it's making your life worse. It is eroding your integrity. It is eroding your confidence, and it is eroding your self-efficacy. The image in your mind that you are generating of yourself by being a person who hasn't done anything about it is not helping you. It's hurting you, and it's hurting the people around you. So if you are anxious to make a decision and you truly feel like you're paralyzed by it, you either decide by this time, I'm going to pick one and I'm going to do it to the best of my logical ability, or find someone that can help you work through it. Find find someone to be a soundboard around your thoughts and have them challenge it, invite challenge towards it, but commit to doing it by a certain time.
Yeah, the key takeaway for me from this conversation is that action overwhelms uncertainty. It's the antidote too.
Yeah.
Because look, regardless of the outcome, you're going to get information, and with better information, and not just the taking in and consuming, but actual application and information, because those two things are different, reading about something versus doing something. You're going to be able to make a better next decision because you made the first one.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to live. You're going to live and you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Just pick the next thing that you think might be it. And if it's not, just do the next one.
Yep. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah. Thanks, Cody.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Active Life podcast. If you did, please head to wherever you listen and leave us that 5-star rating. It really does go a long way. 5 stars goes a long way. Please leave them. If you're interested in working with us as a coach, remember, we help coaches from around the world build fulfilling careers, working with clients they're inspired to help so they never have to worry about being able to pay your bills again. No one's ever going to ask you if you are going to get a real job when you work with Active Life. All you have to do, head into the show notes, click the link that you find there, download our curriculum. That will give you a feel for what it is going to take for you to be successful. A team member of ours will reach out to you to find out if it's a fit for us to work together. Till the next show, turn pro.